And our Lieberman Cornbeth family. Always good to see you guys. And let me get up at the top here. Got the Roth family, got Howard and Joanne. Great to see you. All right, so very nice. And I think that this evening, Sue and Larry are going to help us by lighting candles. So we're going to spotlight them right now. And Lisa, you want to... oh, right, Sue was with us, so it's Lisa reading with Larry. It's great. So we're on page 120 in our prayer books, if you'd like to join with.
Shabbat shalom, everyone. These are stubborn words. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Warder family. Thank you, all of you guys. Shabbat shalom, everyone. We're going to turn now to page 128, and we'll begin our service with Yedid Nefesh. Turn now to page 130 as we begin Kabbalat Shabbat together at the very top of the page.
Lechu neranena l'Adonai nariya letzorishenu nekadma fanav betoda bizmirut nariya lo ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la ya
Now to page 131, Shiru Ladonai, Psalm 96 in the middle of the page.
Sing unto God a new song. Sing unto God and we'll all sing along. All the earth a new song unto God.
We'll turn now to page 132 at the very bottom, or Zarua.
Or Zarua Tadi Uleish Lev Simcha. Or Zarua
Turn now to page 138. 134. Zamru Ladonai.
Zamru Ladonai bechino
We're now on page 135, the last Hebrew paragraph in the middle of the page, Romamu.
Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu le'akom shoromenu. Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu le'akom shoromenu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romenu. Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu le'ar kodsho.
We'll turn now to page 138 for L'chadodi, and a reminder we'll do the first, second, fifth, and ninth paragraphs.
Likrat kalat b'nei Shabbat kabela v'chadoni. Likrat kalat b'nei Shabbat kabela v'chadoni. V'chadoni likrat kalat b'nei Shabbat kabela. V'chadoni likrat kalat b'nei Shabbat kabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad. Ishmi'anu el hamiuchad. Adonai echad u'shemo echad. V'shemo tiferet v'tefila. Echadoni. Echadoni likrat kalat b'nei Shabbat kabela. Echadoni likrat kalat b'nei Shabbat kabela. Likrat Shabbat mekuven elchad. Ki mekor haberachah merosh mikadem nesucha. Sof ma'aseh v'machshava tchila. Echadoni. Echadoni likrat kalat b'nei Shabbat kabela. Echadoni likrat kalat b'nei Shabbat kabela. Itoreri, itoreri, ki la'orech u'mi'uri, uri, shir taveri, kevod Adonai alayich milah. Echadoni. Echadoni likrat kalat b'nei Shabbat kabela. Echadoni likrat kalat b'nei Shabbat kabela. Boi v'shalom
We'll turn now to page 140, beginning at the very top of the page.
מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, לזמר לשמך עליון. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, לזמר לשמך עליון. להגיד הבוקר חסדך, באמונתך בלילות, עלי עשוי ועלי נבל, עלי היגיון ביום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון. צדיק אדוני יפרח, כארץ בלבנון יזכה, שתולים בבית אדוני, בחצרות אלוהינו יפריחו. עוד ינובו מצבא, דשנים ברעננים יהיו, להגיד כי ישר אדוני צורי, ולא עוולתמו.
We'll turn now to page 144 for the Chatzi Kaddish.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה,
אמן.
ולמד יברח ירצה וימליך מלכותה,
בחייכון וביומכון וחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה בעגלה ובזמן קריב,
ויאמרו
אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך, לעלם לעלמיה יתברך.
יתברך וישתבח, מתפאר ויתרומם וינשא, ויתודה ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי קודשה בריחו, לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה.
תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן בעלמה,
ויאמרו
Amen. We'll turn now to page 146 for the Baruch Hu. Turn now to page 149. We'll read together in English at the bottom of the page. This is an hour of change. Within it we stand uncertain on the border of light. Shall we draw back or cross over? Where shall our hearts turn? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? This is the hour of change, and within it we stand quietly on the border of light. What lies before us? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over?
מעביר יום ומביא לילה, ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו, אל חי וקיים, תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד, ברוך אתה אדוני,
Baruch Shemo.
המריב הרביב.
Amen.
אהבת עולם בית ישראל, עמך אהבת, תורה ומצוות, חוקים ומשפטים, אותנו לימדת. על כן אדוני אלוהינו, בשוכבנו וקומנו, נשיח בחוקיך, ונשמח בדברי תורתך, ובמצוותיך, לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו, ובהם נגע יומם ולילה. ואהבתך, אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים, ברוך אתה אדוני.
Baruch Shemo.
אוהב עמו ישראל.
Amen.
שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד.
Please join with me on page 154. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ושוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, Adonai Elohechem Emet. Let's read together on the top of page 157. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it's eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands and marching together, as we turn to page 158. Turn now to page 161.
Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storm.
162. In a moment, we'll begin the Amidah together on page 164, and then we will continue silently. As always, please go at your own pace, and if you choose to rise, you're welcome. If you choose to remain seated, you're welcome. And again, to go at your own pace. Beginning page 164.
La incline your heart and see. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be kind, be true. May they be acceptable to you, oh my rock and my redeemer.
Our thoughts now turn to a prayer for healing for those in our lives, those in our community, and those around the world. We'll turn to page 371 as tonight we think of those in our community and connected to our community. Jim Cohen, Monique Renee Banks Rathbun, Lindsay Epstein, Dolores Michka, Sylvia Orn, Yerachmiel Ben Hinda, Paloma Chauhan, Samuel Moskowitz, Audrey Lubo, Chaim Leib, Robert Posner and Joyce Weinberg, Rick Gold, Stu Pollack, Jane London, Catherine Guarino, Emruna Chaba, Deirdre Klein, Stephanie Skitt, Judy Stern, Miriam Cornfield, Raz Brody, Chana Ruth Bat Sarah, Marley Silverberg, Susan Spruce, Fagel Tzipora Bat Elisheva Bat Sarah, Richard Gambino, Michelle Sawicki, Idol Basha Bat Yitzchak, Tzvi Menachem Ben Chaim, Rivka Bat Devora, Amy and Gavin Tucker, Janice Kurz, David Dowling, Israel Ben Yitzchak, Ben Sion Ben Moshe, Lorraine Danis, Buddy Kasaf, Shelley Newmark, David Kyle Klotman, Rivka Bat Rachel, Sarah Bat Chana, Moshe Eliezer Ben Sivia, Peretz Ben Yehuda, and Leah Bat Naomi. If you're thinking of anyone else this evening who is in need of healing, you're welcome to add their names to the chat or simply to hold them in your hearts and in your minds as we join together with Cantor Lauren on page 371 as we offer our Misha Ber. Shalom, everyone. Cantor, you can take a little break if you'd like. It's wonderful to see all of you. And tonight, I want to talk to you about something that I think that we're all kind of feeling, whether we know how to articulate it or not. And it connects to a prayer or reading that we did earlier in the service, which I don't often do, mostly because I find it a somewhat challenging reading to actually make out loud, but I think it actually offers some profound consideration. So on page 149, as we read earlier, it's an interpretive prayer in place of the normal prayer we would read, first prayer before reciting the Shema. It's on page 149 if you want to look along with me and you have it in front of you. And I'll read it again. It says, "This is an hour of change. Within it we stand uncertain on the border of light. Shall we draw back or cross over? Where shall our hearts turn? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? This is the hour of change, and within it we stand quietly on the border of light. What lies before us? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? So this prayer is really talking about actually a state that we experience as the evening is sort of ending, and in particular as Shabbat is beginning, right? So that's the reason for this prayer and this sort of interpretation, is this idea that we're in a space that's not quite there yet, and we're trying to acknowledge the shifting realities of where we are. So the fancy terminology for this, the sort of academic description of what this space is, where any person who is reading a prayer like this is feeling, is what's called a liminal space. Okay, so I can see a few of your hands. We'll see you ask the question. I can see a few of your faces. Does the word liminal mean anything to any of you? Have you ever heard that word before? Okay, we're getting mostly no's. This was the same case, don't worry, as I'm testing, right, both situations earlier and tonight, same general response. But if I were to say the words to you, preliminary, that I would imagine is familiar, right, preliminary, or subliminal, right, a subliminal message, for example, right, both of those, okay. So they're all from actually this same root of liminal. Liminal basically is the Latin word for a threshold, right, something that is basically a dividing line between one thing and another. So preliminary would imply something that is happening before crossing a threshold, right? So preliminary X, Y, or Z, if you think about it, it makes sense. Subliminal is a psychological term that refers to basically something that is happening below a threshold of consciousness. So we are not even aware that it's taking place because whatever threshold we have for our conscious awareness, it's somewhere in a space below that. But the main idea is that it's basically this sort of dividing line between one place and another. And so being in a liminal space, being in exactly the spot where you are still on the threshold, you're neither here and you're neither there, is one of the most anxiety-producing spaces for human beings to be in. Okay? What we are collectively experiencing right now is one of those times. Okay? We are in a liminal space between the extreme restrictions of the last year, the beginnings of the overturning of some of those restrictions for some of us, and some of those remaining for others of us. And of course, being in this liminal space, the in-between, I think whether we're even aware of it, right, this is where the subliminal part may come in even. Some of us are very conscious of it, and some of us maybe less so. We're all sort of floating around in this space, really kind of unsure where we are. And I had this experience really, it hit me this week for some reason differently than it had, probably because I had finally finished my vaccinations and my 2 weeks and everything, and so it was the first instance in Sag Harbor where, you know, I conceivably could walk down the street without a mask. I'd even walk into a store without a mask. And this morning, in fact, was the first time where I went into one of our local places without a mask, mostly because I wasn't thinking. It didn't even, you know, whatever it was, all of that process of the last year, it wasn't even occurring to me to do it. And I looked around, and sure enough, almost nobody else was wearing the masks either, except for the people working there, which that one still kind of blows my mind exactly how all that works. But the point is that it hit me, right, that part of the anxiety of the space that we're in is that all of us individually, communally, collectively, nationally, and as far as the human race, we are in this really, probably uniquely challenging liminal space, right? We're not yet to the place where all of us are back to normal. Nobody in their right mind should describe what we are experiencing today as normal. This is still not normal, okay? But we are neither in the place that we were a year ago, where everything was terrifying, everything was new, we missed each other terribly, you know, all of those spaces either. So we're not quite there and we're not quite there. And trying to figure out this space in between is very challenging. Now the good news is, Judaism happens to be a religion that is very comfortable dealing with this idea, right? Dealing with this idea of being in transitional spaces. Happens all the time. As I asked before, I like quizzing. Does anybody, even though you can't really answer, know how the Mishnah begins? What's the first conversation in the Mishnah? You can just raise your hand if you think you know the answer. Okay, I'm just going to assume there are no hands. So the beginning of the Mishnah is a conversation about when is the appropriate time to recite the evening Shema. Okay, and the logic of the question is, it's not always quite so clear as when evening starts and when it ends and the day begins. And so the first several pages of the Mishnah are really a conversation with the rabbis just trying to figure out how to define, for example, when is day? When does the day begin? And so we might say to ourselves, of course, the day begins with the sunrise. right? As soon as we see light, that's day. Makes perfect sense. The problem with that is, if you've ever watched the sunrise, you will remember that it gets light before you actually see the sun. There is a period of time in which the sun is still over the horizon, and yet there is a radiance that begins to show. Right? My earliest memories of this are when my father would march us up Masada in the middle of the summer at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning so we would see the sunrise. Right? You really understand it in those kinds of spaces. But this is really what the rabbis were trying to figure out, is how do we define the space in between? How do we know when one thing ends and the other thing begins? Or, for example, to think about the service of Havdalah, right? The service that helps us to transition from the end of Shabbat to the beginning of the rest of the week, right? Lahavdil ben kodesh lechol. The whole idea of Havdalah, of lahavdil, is to acknowledge a separation and a distinction from one thing to the next. And these are just a couple examples that go through our entire history, through our prayer book, etc. And I think that the wisdom of it, the wisdom of the rabbis in dealing with this particular unique kind of challenge of what do we do in liminal space and how do we handle it and how do we process it and how do we have a place for our emotions to go about it, is to really actually embrace the concept of ritual, to embrace the concept of having a moment to acknowledge, to first say out loud that we are in this space, and then ultimately speaking, to create a ritual that helps us to process the emotions around it. Remember that the beautiful midrash about the first Havdalah is what takes place for Adam and Eve after they're thrown out of the Garden of Eden. And they're really experiencing basically hunger, fear, darkness for the first time, and they're terrified. So God ultimately gives them a flame as a means by which to say, even in the scariest places, there is going to be a means by which to give yourself a sense of good things to come. So even when you're in that quote-unquote liminal space, the in-between, that there is a means by which to help us to move forward. Because the one thing about liminal space is, almost by definition, we can't exist in it forever. We can't even really exist in it usually for a long period of time. It's often very transitory. And so basically for me, the most important lesson I take away from the reading that we read earlier from our prayer book, from the discussions of the rabbis, from the service of Havdalah, is that one of the first steps, one of the most important steps, is to acknowledge that that's where we are. That we are in this in-between space, and that it is, in fact, causing us a lot of anxiety and a lot of what we would call in Yiddish tsuris, right? A sort of stirring of the kishkas, as it were. Okay, and so for us as a community, me as the rabbi trying to make decisions about how to handle coming back together, or how are we going to deal with the fact that some, for various reasons, won't be able to be in the same space, how are we going to manage all these things, how are we going to maintain our connections. I wish that I had every answer to everything. All I can say is that, myself, our leadership, we are trying as best as we can to acknowledge the uniqueness of the circumstance, draw as many directions, good directions as we can for moving forward, but also acknowledging the fact that the anxiety is real, the feelings of being in that in-between space are real, and that not all of us are going to be ready to come back to be together physically right away, for lots of different reasons. And it's important for us to acknowledge that for each other, to acknowledge that for self, and to really acknowledge that we are together in this space. And while being in a liminal space can be, even in some cases, terrifying, know that you're not in it alone. And if you're feeling, especially in a really tough space, really not sure how to navigate this kind of beginnings of a coming back to normalcy, these are the times to reach out to us, reach out to your friends, reach out to your family, and be honest. Say where you are struggling, where your lines are, and don't feel like you need to go beyond where you are ready to be. Okay, that's a very, very important part of being in this space, and knowing we won't be here forever. God willing, it will be sooner than later that the whole world will be healed again, or at least on the road to healing. But while we're here, while we're in this tougher spot, let's be kind to each other, let's be thoughtful to each other, let's be appreciative of the different realities that we are all facing and where we are coming from. And let's remember that community, as we have proven over the last year, is not defined by proximity. It's defined very much by a connection, by values, by our love of Torah, by our love of community. And those are things that, even while we may still maintain a certain kind of distance, will never be taken away from us. They are our greatest strength. So with that, I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom, and whether I will be seeing you in person, seeing you online, whatever it might be, I'm just very happy and very excited about the idea that we are beginning to come back together as a community and to see what it is that we have been really longing for together. So with that, again, I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom, and I'll invite you to join me on page 586 as we recite Aleinu, beginning at the bottom of the page. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, latet gedula liotzer breshit, shelo asanu kegoyeh ha'aratzot, velo samanu kemishpechot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, vegor aleinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu korim mishtachavim umodim, לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו Now invite those in mourning and those observing yahrzeit to rise in body or spirit, as first we remember those in our community who've passed in recent months. Miles Ambrose, Morris Dickstein, Fred Eber, Sandra Furman, Evelyn Gelb, Lucy Gladstone, Lois Herr, Phyllis Katz, Jeanette Kopp, Morty Lynn, Jerry Monroe, Madge Judith Parcher, Steve Popkin, Danielle Lisa Rigg, Geraldine Rosen, Harriet Roth, Paul Silver, Joan Strong Tangzilius, Virginia Tizer, and Ann Weiss. We also mark the yahrzeit that occurred during the last week for Anna Busbang, Thelma Center, Ruth Cooper, Irving Kornblath, Joseph Egelfeld, Sadie Eisner, Stephen Garson, Morris Heller, Springer Rodinsky Heller, Sarah Krennick, Henry Lobel, Morris Meyer, Dora Miller, Max Olswang, Aileen Osofsky, Abraham Protas, Max Raich, Anna Schmidt, Ed Silverberg, Ted Tatcon, Abraham Zaltis, and Jean Zaretsky. And if you have a name of someone for whom you're saying Kaddish that you would like to share, you can add them in the chat if you're on our Zoom, or if you're watching at home, to say their names out loud or hold them in your hearts. And we'll turn now to page 598, and I'll invite the mourners to join me on page 598 at the very top. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Be'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chayechon v'yomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael. Ba'agalav izman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevarach le'olam le'almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitbar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudsha b'richu. Leila min kol birchata v'shirata tush b'chata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'imru Amen. Yehei shalom araba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. Zichronam livracha, may every one of their memories be for a blessing.
Amen.
All right, if you happen to be standing at home, you can be seated. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Some important announcements this week, especially to pay attention because some things are changing quite significantly for next week, especially as it relates to Shabbat services. But for this Shabbat, we are keeping things as they've been. Shabbat services will begin tomorrow at 10 o'clock, live streamed on our website, YouTube channel, or Facebook page. Also, our Torah study will begin at 12 o'clock on Zoom. And again, all of that is as it's been. This Sunday, 11 o'clock, the wonderful book group that is led by Ruth Joseph will be meeting on Zoom. It's not too late to join up, but you must sign up with Ruth herself. If you don't know how to contact her, please let Eileen know in the office, and she will make the connection. Also coming up this week, Nida Mitzvah will have its regular Monday gathering at 11:30. Contact Andrea Fagan if you want to join up with them. Also, the Social Justice Committee will be meeting at 5 o'clock on Monday as well. On Wednesday, I very much hope my class on Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel and the Prophets will be back in session at 12, and my class on the Siddur, the prayer book, will be on Fridays at 9 o'clock. So now we're beginning our new things, and actually, Shelley, you can unmute, yes? Okay. So, Shelley, do you want to give us a description of Shabbat by the Bay for the summer, since you're in the know? Let me just give you We'll say hello. Hey, Shelley.
Hi. So we're starting it for the whole month of July and August. We're going to be at Havens Beach And we're going to start at 5 o'clock. From 5 to 5:30, we will have Tikkun Olam projects, some social justice projects that will help different people in our community. And then at 5:30, Rabbi Dan and Cantor Lauren will be there, and they will do a service with us. And if we have anyone who's a drummer and would like to lead drumming circle, I'm still looking for someone. So,
I should have asked. I ran into Jacob today, believe it or not, down the street. I should have asked him, but he looks
but
blissfully teenager-y, so he's off doing his own thing. But we're looking forward to it, Shelley. And a reminder again, Shabbat by the Bay is a service that's generally oriented towards our families with younger children, but we're not so dogmatic about it. So just, but again, it's weather permitting. If it rains, it will be canceled. So pay attention to the weather forecasts. And if you have any questions, you let Shelley know. But Shelley, thank you so much for all of that. And sorry to put you on the spot, but I just figured
that's okay. And
more engaging
we're
than
not noshing this year.
Yes,
We're
no noshing.
schmoozing,
So,
but not noshing.
and also, just a heads up again, there's no restrooms there, so come prepared. That's all. Okay, Shelley, thanks so much. We'll remove the spotlight. You can relax a little. Okay, but in addition to that, starting next Friday, we will have our first indoor services here beginning at 7:30, which will be the case all the way through the end of summer, July and August. So you can join Cantor Lauren and I in this beautiful sanctuary as you see it. You're going to come in through the main doors there, the main parking lot, which is off of Union Street. If you don't know, if you've never been here before, please let Eileen in the office know and she'll give you some directions. The key piece is here, the only way that we can have the indoor services is by ensuring that everyone who is present has been vaccinated. So in an ideal world, if you're interested in coming at any point over the summer, please just get a verification of your vaccination to the office so that we know, and we'll have you on the roster. And if you're just going to, show up, then just make sure that you bring your card with you or Excelsior Pass or anything of the sort that will give the indication. Now, here's the important piece. All of our services will continue to be live streamed. The only difference is it won't be on Zoom on Friday nights anymore because Zoom has a lag. So you'll watch it either on our website, Facebook, or YouTube. But the key piece is to maintain the connective piece for anybody who can't physically come. After service is over, I'm going to set up a TV screen and a camera and basically what we've got here so that anybody who wants, we're going to still have a virtual oneg. That way anybody who's here can talk to the people who are not here. All the people who are not here can talk to the people who are here. It's not quite the same as being in the social hall with food and all that stuff, but it's the best that your rabbi could come up with to make sure that we're still feeling connected in that way. It's very, very important to me. It was the hardest part of making the decision to allow for coming back together was knowing that there are still many of us who are not yet there for various kinds of reasons. But I don't want there to be a severing of that connection. And even if the only connection that we get to see each other in the week is a 5-minute on the oneg afterwards, that's important to me. So we're going to try it, and we're going to continue to adjust as time goes on. I'm sure there will be a lot of things learned over the next couple of weeks, but we're going to do our very best. And again, same principle applies for Saturday mornings. This is the other really key thing, because I know we have some of our regulars on. Just to explain something quickly, Torah study actually is the greater challenge, because Torah study was always designed to be with eating, right? You have people sitting there from 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock. If you don't feed them, ein kemach, ein Torah. Without flour, there is no Torah. Everybody would start to, let's just say it wouldn't end well. So what we're going to do is we're going to shift the start time of Saturday morning services a little bit earlier to 9:30. That way the service will end by 11. That way anybody who comes in person still has time to get back to their home, to their computers. Torah study will therefore continue on Zoom, at least for the duration until we're back to a place where we can serve food again. And even then, we will make sure that anybody who wants to participate from a distance will be able to do so. So the main thing is for Saturday morning, anybody who wants to come in person will come again to the Whalers Church. Same principle, need to have vaccination. But if you're watching at home, same idea. You'll watch it on YouTube, Facebook, or our website. It just starts at 9:30. It'll end closer to 11. And then Torah study will be on Zoom, same bad channel, bad time, all that stuff. And we'll have a good time. So I'm sorry about all that, semi-confusing explanation. But, liminal space. We're in a tough spot. See, Lauren's there. Now he sees it. Now he sees the connection. Right? There is a logic behind all these things. And we're going to do our very best. So thank you for your understanding in advance, and thank you for working with us. And, hopefully we will be back to a real normal sooner than later, and there'll be a whole lot less explaining things, which will be really very nice. And I promise that wasn't all on my announcement sheet. I just said a lot of it. Okay, last thing, just to note a couple of things coming up in July. One is a tour of the Medu Conservancy with wine and cheese on July 11th. You need to sign up for that. Also, a Havdalah Harbor Sunset Cruise on July 24th. But for this, we have a need to have enough people sign up by July 8th for it to happen. So if you're interested, sign up, join us. If for any reason the financial part of it is complicating for you, please contact me. I will make it work for you. Okay, don't let finances be the thing that gets in the way. Okay, if you're interested, please let me know. So with that, I think those are all of my announcements. Cantor Lauren, you got anything?
I don't.
We want to know what the Roth family, the Bader family is eating for dinner. That we're going to find out at our own egg for sure. Looked like a good meal. So, Cantor, we'll have a closing song and then we'll do Kiddush. I'll invite you to join with me at home. If you have grape juice, wine, or something else handy, we're on page 123. Page 123. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho b'ahava u'vratzon inchilanu zikaron l'maaseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila lemikra'ei kodesh zecher l'tziat Mitzrayim Kivanu v'acharta ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim ve'shabbat kodshecha be'ahava u'vratzon inchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat. Amen. L'chaim to you, l'chaim to you, l'chaim to you, l'chaim to you. Shabbat shalom, everybody, and let me just unmute everybody here. Ask everybody. Okay, you can unmute yourselves if you'd like. Let everybody. Ask all. There we go. Okay, good. And we'll say goodnight to all of our streaming friends.